G'day viewers, I've got Jaan Tallinn here today, and Jaan has been interviewed before, and I've got those interviews up on my channel. But Jaan is one of the programmers behind the Kazaa file sharing platform, and a founding engineer of Skype, which we're currently using to record this. He is also a partner in a seed stage venture firm for Ambient Sound Investments, a co-founder and chairman of MetaMed Research, a startup intent on revolutionising healthcare, and is a co-founder of the Cambridge Centre for the Study of Existential Risk, which is a research centre at the University of Cambridge in England, investigating the risks and opportunities of future technologies. So yeah, it's great to have you again on the show.
Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, my pleasure. Now, look, I was just wondering if you could, for those who don't know what existential risk is, do you want to give a brief overview of what that means?
Sure. So existential risks are risks of scenarios in which the human species perishes, or where our civilization is permanently curbed. So, for example, when we have a large asteroid collision that would sterilize the planet, that is a scenario where basically the life ends here, including human species. Or scenarios where we might end up having global totalitarianism, where that basically sets the civilization on a entirely stable in terms of no further development path.
Right. So, so now the Centre for Study of Existential Risk at Cambridge. Now, it focuses on xRisk, but it also focuses on achieving, following up possibilities of useful technologies that may, Do you want to discuss some of the key risks key technologies that you cover at the Centre for Existential Risk, the Cambridge Centre for Existential Risk?
Well, it's important to point out that Cambridge Centre actually hasn't done any research yet. It's still in starting phase and trying to, we have one admin and we have an office and we have done a bunch of media interviews and have some meetings with advisors. But we are firmly in the situation where we are searching for funding. However, there is fair amount of consensus between the different organizations, and I'm supporting 8 existential risk organizations these days. And among them, which are the biggest categories of risks to pay attention to, and they are, well, first of all, nuclear risk. Not necessarily that it's a big risk for human species, but it is a risk that is definitely there, and it's potentially species ending, and it's something that most people understand what this risk is about. So it's an easy risk to kind of start the conversation with, an easy technological existential risk that you can basically put on a table and then go on from there. And the other risks are risk of new biotechnologies, things like engineered viruses or even synthetic life, and nano, which these days pretty much gets lumped together with biotechnology because looks like the most plausible way to get nanostructures is using biologically inspired methods. Then there's my specialty, which is artificial intelligence. And finally, basically unknown unknowns, because if you think about it, all the risks that I mentioned so far are less than 100 years old. So it's plausible that as the century progresses, we will learn about new and scary things that might await us that we might not be aware of right now.
Yeah, so they're the major categories of risk. There are others like being hit by an asteroid or alien invasions and things like that. Um, but
The things about asteroids, I mean, asteroids are also kind of easy to understand risk, but the nice thing about asteroid risk is that it's quantifiable, and it's being quantified, and it turns out it's fairly low. And also, it's a risk that we have lived with entire time. So it's unlikely to basically go significantly up. However, the other risks that I mentioned, they are new to us as the humanity is basically entering the uncharted waters of 21st century, and with new technologies. Basically, new technologies that we develop will bring new risks that we are not really prepared for.
Mm. And I guess it's really hard to measure a risk that has never really, I guess, resulted. Like we've never had an AI go rogue, or we haven't accidentally created
Mhm.
huge pandemics, on purpose
Mhm.
before. So these are sort of unknowns.
Sure, but I mean, it's important to note that uncertainty in assessing the risk is itself a risk in the sense that I mean, this is a typical, like quite often people say that, oh, like we don't know anything about the future, or we don't know anything about these risks that you're talking about, therefore like we shouldn't do anything. No, that's just completely flawed thinking.
Hmm.
If we see that there is a risk and we don't know how big that is, then there is we shouldn't just like kind of that is not an argument for being complacent. It is an argument for actually doing more research, trying to figure out. I mean, imagine if you were like boarding a plane and somebody said that like there's a reason to suspect that there's a bomb on this plane, but like well, it's very hard to figure out like how big the risk is. We just know that this plane is exceptional, so somehow just like this century is exceptional. Like, would you take the plane and would you be like, okay, if we can't quantify the risk, if we can't know exactly what is the probability of having a bomb on this, like should we just like ignore this piece of news?
Yeah, right. And the outcome of a bomb going off on the plane is pretty big for everybody on board, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. That is the reasoning. So like, even if the risk is small, which it probably isn't, unfortunately, it will not just affect everyone on the board, but all the future generations in case of the existential risk. So it's not just billions of people; it's probably trillions.
hmm. Yes. So yeah, I think it's interesting to think about what's at stake. We could be moving technologically into a golden age in a sense. There's with technologies we already have achieved many great things.
Yep.
But what's at stake? I mean, we don't know exactly, but we know that we can really create a better future with technology. And if we're not around to experience it, then that's what's at stake. What's your take on what's at stake here?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's important to realize that the way that technological progress benefits humanity is via market mechanism. So there is like when you are a scientist or researcher or engineer that's creating a new kind of technology, there is a certain selection pressure that the markets apply to you. If you come up with technology that just doesn't work or isn't that good, people will not buy it. And vice versa, if you come up with a like revolutionary new technology that like helps a lot of people, there is a big demand for it. However, once you create technologies whose power goes beyond the markets, really, you cannot no longer rely on this sort of markets auto-correcting the trajectory of technological progress. So, for example, if you create an artificial intelligence that is just able to rearrange atoms at will, it will no longer just kind of sit around and wait for human markets to give it orders or like it's not going to just try to make money on the markets using its capabilities. It has no need for human economy.
Yes, right. So it wouldn't be dependent on that. If it knows how to rearrange molecules, for anybody who not aware or hasn't read Engines of Creation by Eric Drexler, you can pretty much make anything in a sense. You can create new materials. You can build things from the ground up.
And you don't need money for that. That's the important point.
You don't need money. All you need is atoms. All you need is molecules. Sorry. Yeah. So well. So like we're talking about existential risk as also affecting future generations that aren't yet alive. One of the things that I find hard to get around my head is how you assess the value of a life that has not yet come to be.
Well, it's a sort of moral philosophy question, really, and I mean, there are people who have thought more about it, and one important disclaimer is that, like, you don't, again, just like with the risk assessment, you don't need to exactly to sort of pin down the value of humans who are like 20,000 generations from here to basically see that, okay, the risk is like really, 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 really big, or the value that's potential at stake is just really, really big. You don't need to know exact numbers. However, my own sort of philosophy, which might be flawed, I haven't thought much about it, is that you basically do something similar that you do with that we seem to be doing with other living organisms here on the planet. So we clearly care more about like higher organisms like dogs versus lower ones like I don't know, ants or mosquitoes. So there is probably some metric that you can put, some metric of similarity to humans. And also we care more about our like immediate relatives than we care about like more distant relatives or people who are not related at all. I mean, obviously, like everyone is related eventually, but so there clearly is some metric to use how much we should assign our amount of caring to them. So I think something like that could probably be generalized to future generations. Basically, like see how similar they are, how close their values are to us, and something like that.
So you mentioned AI as one of the focuses, but I will get to that later. Can you give us an example of near-term possible existential risks that may seem exotic to some people, but you know, with the progress in technology, might actually be more likely than people would intuit, who don't know, I guess, don't have much affiliation with biotech or nanotech.
So, yeah. I mean, again, with the disclaimer that it's hard to assess the probability of those risks, so it's actually not.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are arguments, counter arguments to what I'm going to say, but one thing, I mean, fairly intuitive thing, are the global pandemics. So, I mean, we have like this cultural memory of things like Spanish flu, and so it's kind of easy to imagine pretty much everyone dying as a result of some pandemic. And the interesting thing here is that like if you are dealing with there might be a fundamental difference between like a naturally evolved like a virus and the bioengineered virus, because a naturally evolved virus is or bacteria is following the logic of evolution. So it's a known fact that viruses get less deadly over time because their interest it is to infect as many people as possible, as many carriers as possible. And if you are very deadly, you don't get the chance to do that. You basically kill your host and you don't get to spread. However, if you have a bioengineered virus, then it's really up to the designers to choose what this thing is going to be like. So it's not necessarily constrained by evolutionary logic. So you can have viruses that are much more deadly towards just this, or much more infectious, like this. I think it was Dutch researchers. There was a controversy about that, but Dutch researcher figured out how to make avian flu much more contagious. And so yeah, like if you put engineering, human engineering effort and ingenuity, you might find agents and viruses that are just much more worse than whatever evolution would come up with.
Even today, but further with tomorrow's
Well,
technology.
I heard like scary things from people who know more about biotechnology. So yeah, I'm not an expert on biotechnology myself, so I don't actually know how much credence to lend to them.
Okay. So there are a couple of the categories that are of xRisk that the Centre for Existential Risk focuses on at Cambridge. There's a couple of interesting players involved in the set, on the board and stuff. I know Shauna Harity is who's also at the Future of Humanity Institute is on board.
Is transitioning from FHI to. So it's like spending half of the week at FHI now and second half at Cambridge.
Oh, okay.
And he's kind of transitioning over to Cambridge.
Yeah, I've interviewed him. He's a very nice guy and he's very intelligent too. So he's great and he's straight down the line. I like that. Yeah, so is he going to end up full time at Centre for Existential Risk? Do you think?
Yes, that is the plan.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, and Nick Bostrom's also on like one of the chairs or on the board or something like that.
Well, I mean, Nick is probably one of the greatest figures in existential risk research in the world. So yes. He has been at it for like a decade.
A long time.
More.
Yeah. Yes, that's quite true. So yeah, another guy I've got a lot of respect for. And he was also one of the founders of the World Transhumanist Association, which I'm on the board of. It's now called Humanity Plus. But so it looks as though there are some Martin Rees as well is involved. Is that correct?
Yes, he is one of the 3 co-founders of the Cambridge Centre.
Yeah. And who else is involved? Stephen Hawking. I saw a photo of him. I don't know what he does, but like yeah, he's involved somehow, from what I hear.
Yeah, I mean, he has written several articles about this topic, so I haven't actually personally met him yet, but like he is clearly concerned about these issues, so he is happy to lend his name, at least, to these causes.
Yeah, well, I've heard he was interested in artificial intelligence and the possibility of the risks involved there, and I was wondering whether that stemmed from his involvement with this Centre for Existential Risk.
I think he has been sort of voicing his concerns before the centre was created. So.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, George Church, who's a famous neuroscientist. Yeah, David Chalmers, famous philosopher. Yeah, he's an Australian as well from ANU. Stuart Russell, one of the writers of what's that AI book? The famous AI textbook.
Artificial intelligence, the modern approach, yes.
Yes, a modern approach, that's right. Peter Singer, a famous ethicist. Max Tegmark, famous physicist, mathematician.
Yeah, Max Tegmark, we just created a new center at MIT.
Yes.
With Max, called Future of Life Institute. So, yep, we are. The movement is basically getting traction, more and more traction.
Yeah, and another person who I did interview when I was in Oxford a couple of years ago was Maggie Bowden, and she seems to be an advisor as well. Yeah. So
I haven't actually met her myself. I saw her talk at the Oxford conference that we attended.
Yeah, well, she's as far as I understand, she's pretty seminal to some of the psychology slash AI approach. Yeah, so
Yeah, she's a big name in UK at least. Yeah.
yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's awesome that this Center for
Yeah,
Existential Risk is here. Yeah.
I would like, even though like existential risk hasn't like made actual research contributions yet, as opposed to the Future of Humanity Institute, for example, has been around and has active researchers. I think there is like one thing that the Cambridge Center actually has contributed to the world, which is basically, as I sometimes joke, it gives a canonical answer to the question of existential risks. Says who? You can just point them to the list of impressive names on the Cambridge website. And more generally, I think uh, the existential risk ecosystem has basically gone through a series of constraints, and it basically started with what I call reputational constraint. So like when 5 to 10 years ago, when people started discussing these things and pointing out that there might be a problem with like big technological risks, they were just dismissed as having not enough reputation. And it was very easy to like mount reputational attacks against some nerds from California or something like that. So like, but this constraint has largely lifted now. And I think Cambridge Center has played a large part there, just by basically having a really prominent list of scientists and say that no, this isn't just like a nerd thing that can be dismissed. This is a serious issue. So I think the reputational constraint has been largely lifted. Now we have a financial constraint, and so like I think the research is largely existential risk research is largely constrained by lack of finances. I think there are about 4 million. Like the global budget for existential risk research is about 4 million per year, and I think that can go up, like I would say, an order of magnitude before we would hit the next constraint, which would be the quality people. Like how do we, like, if the financial constraints would be removed completely today, we would immediately have the problem of like how do you find sufficiently qualified people who could actually contribute valuable research. And I'm glad that there is now like free organizations in academia, because there's a lot of quality people in academia who aren't that thrilled with the prospect of exiting academia. They are kind of associated their life with and career with academia. So it's great that we have now like 2 institutes in UK and 1 in US that could, if they were properly funded, they could definitely attract researchers from all over the world, like academics.
Yeah, and I imagine the prestige gained from like some big thinkers associating themselves with this cause will help in a big way. So yeah, what do you think the next few years for the Center for the Study of Existential Risk will be like? What do you foresee? If you had a crystal ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, for our different grants that we are applying to, we have prepared some plans, and they really basically are, I think, on the really base level. I just want to kind of replicate what Future of Humanity Institute is doing, because they have been putting out quality research, and do that in Cambridge with a different set of people, and hopefully kind of complement what FHI is doing. And so we have like a list of various research avenues to pay attention to, and also we have this idea. Another I think idea that I have brought onto the table is that it's important to not just do academic research, but it's also important to integrate with like actual companies that are developing technologies, and make sure that research is actually useful for them, if not in the near future, then at least in the long future, or like in the more distant future. So that's why I've been doing like investments in AI companies, for example, and just like trying to bring the existential risk research community and AI entrepreneurship and development community together and get them talking to each other. So I think that's one thing that the Cambridge Center is planning to promote in a more systematic way.
Right, that's awesome. And you have been investing a bit in the AI. So actually, I think a good natural transition is to talk about one of these existential risks that you specialize in, and that's the AI, the intelligence explosion, or the type of AI that might lead to that. Well, just first of all, I mean, like the intelligence explosion was coined. The term was really brought up by the statistician and mathematician I.J. Good. Do you want to give us a quick briefer on what the intelligence explosion is and how that relates to artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So yeah, it was pointed out like almost 50 years ago by I.J. Good that if you are creating machines that are as good as us in all intellectual activities, then one of those intellectual activities is creating new technology. So by definition, we would be creating something that is better than us in creating new technology. Or put it differently, once you have machines that are better at AI development than the original AI developers were, you will have like a potential explosive situation where like the next generation of machines of AIs is no longer developed by humans, and therefore like the trajectory is no longer under human control. So yeah, there's like a lot of disagreement about even like within existential risk existential risk reduction proponents or advocates, that like how hard it is for an AI to develop new AIs, or how hard it is for AI to improve itself. And there are arguments both ways. But again, like I would just fall back to this is basically the dilemma, like soft takeoff versus hard takeoff dilemma. Is the process of AIs improving themselves slow enough for the society to react and steer the process, or goes it just like in the timescales of recompilation? But again, it's like if there's a lot of uncertainty, we don't know like for sure that this is going to be soft takeoff. Like we should basically pay very close attention to the possibilities that are potentially disastrous for humans.
And you've discussed the idea of an intelligence stairway as a metaphor for describing the difference between like natural selection producing like humans and humans producing AIs, and then the different forms of optimization processes. So yeah, I was just wondering if you could briefly go into that, because that's pretty interesting actually.
The intelligence stairway was a talk I gave like 3 years ago, and it basically pointed out that in some way this situation where when we were talking about humans creating machines that are smarter than us, like in some ways, in some framing, this situation has already happened in the past, when evolution, which is actually sort of a fairly dumb optimization process, it basically tries different designs, and those that work, they kind of get to stick around. But there is no deliberate planning or anything like that humans can do. So evolution was able to come up with humans, and in some ways it was a really bad idea from evolution's perspective, because humans have been overriding evolution like all the time. Just when you talk about things like agricultural breeding or things like that they are no longer evolutionary processes. They are just like humans have hijacked evolution. And even like more recently, all genetic engineering. I mean, I talked to one of the people at Beijing Genomics Institute, and like one of the startling things that they said was like, oh, like we have basically have gathered all this data about different genomes, and we can look at the data and see like, oh, we see what evolution is trying to do. So it's like by the fact of by virtue of being a smarter and more powerful optimizer than evolution is, we can basically leapfrog, and therefore kind of have already yanked control to a significant degree from evolution. Like one example of that I think I used in my presentation is that if you're an alien and looking at the planet Earth, if you look at it like 100,000 years ago when evolution was in charge, like when you try to predict what's going to happen in the next million years, then you would, if you just used biological evolution as your main planet-shaping force in your model, you would get the predictions completely wrong because unless you figure out that, okay, evolution is going to produce humans, or like it's going to push apes over a certain threshold where they can have cultural development and thereby start building cities and changing the environment and having this all these environmental problems. And so like one other thing is that over the course of a few hundred years, or like few thousand years if you want to be generous, the planet has gone from producing forests to producing cities. And so therefore, like, this is what I mean, that there was like a qualitative phase change when evolution produced something that was smarter than it. Like, so in some ways we can look at it as a model for what might happen when we produce something that is smarter than us.
Yeah, right. So that's a pretty profound way of looking at it, because often people just see technology that's around us as just being part of our environment. In a sense, the intuition was, hey, it was pretty much always there, and take it for granted. But people don't really see naturally, aren't adept at seeing beyond their own lifespan or beyond their own sort of. But even in our own life, we've seen new technologies just rise out of unexpectedly for most of us. Out of thin air, like the internet, mobile computing and things like that, and genomes being sequenced, and quantum computing and quantum technology. These ideas didn't just spring out of somebody's intuition, for sure. I mean, yeah, these are really interesting outcomes. So yeah. Look, what if you put your extremely speculative hat on, what do you see if everything went well, and we did have a safe transition through an intelligence explosion? Would you have a stab at like guessing what would be on the other side? What we could expect?
I mean, clearly there are things that like most of the things I just can't imagine because I'm a mere human. So if I had sort of ability to control what would happen, I would basically try to err on the conservative side, and instead of like redoing the world, I would just take the existing world and put it on a sort of permanent path of improvement, of gradual improvement. So making sure that people would gradually get smarter, they would be more and more well off over time. So in general, it seems to be that people value improvement a lot, and they underestimate how much they value improvement. So, for example, there's research into like if you get a pay rise, then that affects you in just a few days. Like you're very happy because you got the raise. So what it shows is that the fact that you got the raise is more important, like from much more important than how much do you make. So it kind of wears off. So in some ways, you can even kind of look at the planet these days, and it's not doing that bad. I mean, there's a lot of, from one hand, there's a lot of poverty and suffering on the planet still, but like if you look at the improvement, if you compare like how the planet is improving, how the life of average person on this planet is doing, it is improving over time. So therefore, like I think the most minimal version of positive singularity is let's just keep doing what we're doing, and but in a way that wouldn't end up in a disaster or something catastrophic. So I think that's the perhaps not very exciting, but in a way kind of a meta approach to actually producing something that's very exciting in a safe and conservative way.
Mm. So there are two approaches that you've mentioned before about avoiding unfavorable outcomes from an intelligence explosion. One of them being provably friendly AI, and the other one being restricting to AI to narrow domains. Do you want to discuss first what you mean by provably friendly AI? If I read that correctly, yeah.
Yeah. So excuse me, my dog there. It's so this is something that MIRI's Machine Intelligence Research Institute is concentrating on, or is researching right now, and are making actually interesting and nice progress these days. So this is basically, it stems from the observation that if you really want to be sure about something, we need to prove it mathematically. Like this is the biggest amount of certainty that we can squeeze out from our predictions, is that if we are making mathematical predictions that are rooted in mathematics. So the idea of provably friendly or provably safe AI comes from that kind of thinking. So you would instead of like developing a piece of computer code and then trying to shape it, you actually develop mathematical frameworks where because like in the sense of it, computer science is just part of mathematics. So ultimately all programs are mathematical objects. So instead of just like programming AI as you were programming any other piece of code, you would actually first develop mathematical models, what the AI should be, and then prove theorems about what this AI would do, because ultimately what we really care about is what this AI would do. And once you are happy with the result of what it's going to do, then you just realize this, instantiate this mathematical model in code, and hopefully you're in a much better place than if you did it without mathematical constraints.
Mm-hmm. And then the other one was restricting AI to narrow domains.
Yes. So if you think about it, one way of phrase the problem is that the AIs, as they get smarter and smarter, they might become more and more aware of the of wider and wider domains. And by what I mean by that is that if you imagine a chess player or a chess computer, it's really its world that it is modeling is really the chessboard. The only thing that it can see are things that are happening on this chessboard, and then it is trying to basically from the moves that its opponent is making, it's effectively trying to deduce the intentions of the opponent, etc. However, imagine if we had a much larger domain instead of just having this chessboard as its whole world. It would also have the ability to model what's going on outside, and it would be able to model the actual opponent and try to figure out what it is thinking. I mean, this is what humans are doing. Especially like this is one of the reasons why humans are good at poker. And machines are not so. I mean, there's already talk about developing poker AIs that are able to effectively model humans by looking at the micro expressions, etc., etc. So it's clearly useful to basically expand the domain from this narrow game board to the larger domain that includes both the game board and your opponents, and possibly even yourself. At which point you are basically would be able to make predictions that, okay, if somebody comes in and unplugs me, I'm not going to win the game. So therefore, like, if I can do something about it, I should, because that's what that's what I'm programmed to do. If I'm programmed to win the chess game. So the idea with sort of domain sandboxing or trying to constrain the domain is basically create an AI that is ideally provably, but at least in some ways constrained to certain domains. It wouldn't have ability to look beyond what it is modeling right now. So yeah, if it's a chess computer, we just deliberately wouldn't give it the ability to actually look beyond the chessboard and model the humans and model itself and model the power grid or anything like that. So that's like one approach. I would say, like, some ways more practical approach. It's less powerful, but I would say more practical than the proved AI as a mathematical object from the clean slate.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. Yeah, that was really good. So, yeah, I guess next I'd like to talk about DeepMind, but I'm going to put that in a separate section of the video.